Welcome back to the Michael Lofton Show on Reason and Theology. Rested, did 10 hours live streaming today. Absolutely was exhausted. Got away, got a little bit of rest, got some food, feel a whole lot better. And I didn't think I would be doing another stream today, but yeah, you know what? Gotta go ahead and start engaging some stuff and taking a look at it. I'm seeing a lot of people reacting to the new Pope Leo XIII, formerly Cardinal Provost, prefect for the dicastery over the bishops. We're seeing reactions from a lot of people, some very negative, some positive, maybe more negative than positive on the whole, but we're seeing reactions with Glenn Beck, Bishop Strickland. We're seeing Cardinal Burke. We're seeing Father James Martin. Um, LifeSite News, all sorts of people reacting, and somewhere as I kind of predicted things would go. I've already done. Not only did I do a 10-hour live stream today, 10 hours record for the longest I've ever gone on this channel live stream. Not only did I do 10 hours, and in the last 2 hours or so, I reviewed the new Pope Leo XIII, but YouTube decided to block that video because they felt just a few minutes out of 10 hours were copyrighted. So I'm going through the process of getting those like few minutes removed. In the meantime, what I did is I clipped I don't know, maybe the last hour, just took out some highlights from it, condensed it down into 30 minutes where I give my quick analysis of what we know so far about the new Pope, which I'll recap in just a second, but I'm just telling you that video is available. I did make it available in a 30-minute clip. So it's right here on the channel. So even if you can't see that full 10-hour stream and you don't want to watch 10 hours, which I don't blame you, you can at least watch that like 30-minute highlight clip where I give you a breakdown of everything that we know about him so far, and a quick summary of that right now, in case you haven't seen that or don't have the time to go and watch that. Okay, what we're seeing is, as I anticipated, this is a pope who is in continuity with Pope Francis. This is a pope who is a continuation of Francis's vision and legacy for the church. So he is going to be, kind of seen as a Francis, another Pope Francis. Some feel that he might be slightly a little bit more traditional when it comes to the liturgy, but slightly, not a whole lot, but just a little bit more. And there are some indicators of that. As soon as he came out, you saw looked a little bit more like Pope Benedict XVI than when Francis came out. But there's some concerns about him liturgically that some people are going to express. I'm about to go over that. Some people are concerned that he restricted communion to communion on the hand during COVID. We'll talk about that here in a moment. So he might be a little slight more to the right when it comes to the liturgy, but not a whole lot. Some have said maybe that he celebrated the Latin Mass, but those are rumors. People don't know. It may have been a private thing. What we do know, okay, is that in continuity with Pope Francis, he was very close to Pope Francis. He has kept a low profile in the media, low under the radar. We knew he was top 10. I already said he was top 10. We knew he was in top 10 list for most people, but we didn't think that he was like top 3, not even top 5. He was somewhere in there, but not necessarily anticipated. But kept a low profile in the media, so there's not a lot about him. There are some concerns about how he has handled some sex abuse cases. Some have said that he did everything that he was supposed to do. He's perfectly fine. Others are concerned, saying no, he could have done more. There's going to be huge debates raging on that. There's the question of how does he react to same-sex blessings. He's on the whole in favor of fiducia supplicans, what Pope Francis and Fernandez did with fiducia supplicans and blessings for homosexual couples. On the whole, he's in favor, but he recognized that this won't work in Africa, in places where homosexuality is outlawed. This would practically cause some problems. Therefore, in those areas, he's not necessarily in favor of implementing them, but outside of Africa, he had no problem with them being implemented. Traditionalist Custodes, there's kind of a big question mark. Where is he at on the Latin Mass? Is he going to further restrict it? Is he going to be, aggressive for it or against it, or somewhere in the middle? And again, big question mark on that. Amorsa Tizia, where is he at on the question of communion for divorced and remarried people. On the whole, it seems like he's, pretty much in line with Pope Francis on the matter. He's highly synodal, very much in favor of Pope Francis's synodal vision for the church, which some people are concerned about. Others believe that synodality is not an issue, so they might be a little less concerned. But those who were sounding the alarms, really concerned about a synodal model for the church, they're going to be incredibly concerned about Provost, because he's very much in favor of it. In fact, in his speech there, as he came out on the Logia, he even mentioned synodality there and how we need to be a synodal church and all that. And so there are concerns about his appointments. However, whenever he was prefect for the dicastery for bishops, which was true of him up until pretty much today, he had some concerning appointments. McElroy, some might say. He also was the guy who was basically over the dicastery that was in part responsible for removing Bishop Strickland. So if you're a Bishop Strickland fan, you're probably not going to be a bishop. You're not going to be a Pope Leo XIV fan, most likely. But if you were in favor of Strickland being removed, Bishop Strickland in Texas, the United States, then you probably would be in favor of Leo XIV, or maybe possibly in favor of him. North American Pope, so from Chicago. This is going to be an interesting perspective on how that works. That was certainly a surprise. He's 69 years old, so he's not too young. He's not too old, but some have felt that maybe he was a good choice here for being an American, because they felt like maybe an American can clean house financially with the corruption going on in the Vatican and other kinds of corruption. That's the rumors, supposedly, that hopefully an American will be able to fix that. I don't know. It seems like Americans might actually ruin that. And of course, I say that as an American, right? But I don't know how necessarily an American would fix that, but that's the claim, right? Which we'll see that here in a moment from Raymond Arroyo. We're going to get his take. We're going to get Strickland's take. We're going to get Glenn Beck. We're going to get Cardinal Burke, Father James Martin, who seems to be very in favor of him, whereas your Stricklands and LifeSite News are very critical. So a lot going on here. Not a whole lot of information. There are some comments that he made critical of homosexual acts, but as I will just point out, as soon as Pope Francis was elected, the first thing people pointed out were comments that he made when he was a cardinal in Buenos Aires against homosexual acts. Like, immediately people brought those out, and they're like, oh, this is a conservative cardinal. But a lot of people ended up feeling that he was a progressive and a liberal, and that it was in favor of all those things. Whether or not that's true is a different discussion, but you'll notice how quickly the narrative changed in the media. So right now, some people are saying, well, he's been a little critical of homosexual acts, but again, they said the same about Pope Francis. And he's been critical of people deviating from a godly model of the family. Well, so was Pope Francis. So we'll see how that plays out in the media, and also in his magisterial acts. Of course, he took the name Leo XIV, modeled based on Pope Leo XIII, one of the most prolific writers for the papal magisterium, with over 90 papal documents. Some say that he chose this because he's very much into the social doctrine of the church, and so was Leo XIII. And so, since he had experience in Peru as a South American bishop, though he was born in North America, he had some experience there as a bishop. Some are going to say he's kind of along the lines of Pope Francis's vision for the poor, in favor of migrants. He has been critical publicly of J.D. Vance as recently as February. So it appears that though he is a registered Republican, he's not very favorable to the current administration on questions like migration, and has been critical. Even though he doesn't speak up much, at least on this issue, he spoke up and publicly about J.D. Vance. By the way, thank you for this super sticker. So I'm just giving you kind of a rundown of what we know about him so far. That's a quick recap of what we've seen, and I'm sure more will come. Some feel that he's going to be doctrinally orthodox, but he's very much into reaching out to people in the margins and being a merciful and pastoral, having that pastoral approach. So solid in doctrine, but pastoral in the way he conducts himself and handles people. And um, not too severe in matters of discipline, but also maybe not too lax. And there's going to be others who feel like, no, he's not going to be doctrinally sound. So you're going to see differences of opinion on that. So that's a quick recap of what we have learned so far and what I've covered so far. Now, let me go ahead and take you to what some other folks are saying so you can kind of get a feel for others. I know Taylor Marshall just did a video. I don't know what happened to it. It seems it was taken down from Twitter. It could be for copyright issues like they did with me on YouTube. So I have no idea what's going on with that video, but I know he was incredibly critical, very severely critical of Pope Leo XIV, was very concerned, and we'll see where he lands on that question once we find out what happened to that video and what he says, afterwards. It could be that he was trying to walk it back because some people appear to be more favorable, and he wanted to walk it back, or it could be that just the video was taken down because of YouTube. So I don't know. I can't comment a whole lot on him beyond that. Now, as far as LifeSite news, you can see the headline. They're saying 5 worrying things you need to know about Leo XIV. So that already lets you know where they're coming from. And of course, they're big Bishop Strickland fans, and he is partly the one who was kind of responsible for having him removed, Bishop Strickland removed as a bishop. So of course they're not going to see this election as a good thing. So they say the conclave has chosen an anti-Trump, even though he's registered Republican, they're identifying him as anti-Trump. Pro-Senate American Robert Prevost, known as Leo XIV, to succeed Pope Francis. A vocal critic of Trump immigration policy. Prevost is a vocal critic of U.S. President Donald Trump's administration and has consistently used his X account to promote material hostile to Trump's immigration policy. I have been able to see what he did say about J.D. Vance, so that part I can confirm. He says J.D. Vance is wrong. Jesus doesn't ask us to rank our love for others. That was the whole Amoris Ordo Amoris controversy that Vance was in. In one instance, February 3rd, Prevost reposted an article by NCR Online, which some are going to say is progressive, is liberal. J.D. Vance is wrong. Jesus doesn't ask us to rank our love for others. The article criticizes U.S. Vice President for correctly arguing that we owe more immediate responsibility to our own family members and country than to those overseas. So if you were kind of critical of Pope Francis's immigration policy, you'll likely be critical of him. If you were in favor of Pope Francis's immigration policy, you'll likely be in favor of Leo XIV. Where do I get my energy from? I don't know. I needed a just quick lunge there in a few moments to take a breather. But yeah, that was rough. Been up since 4:30 in the morning streaming for 10 hours, and here we are again. But I felt this was necessary to go over, so here we are. Okay. He shared a similar article by Dissident American Magazine on the same topic, Later Days, Pope Francis's letter, J.D. Vance, Ordo Amoris, and what the gospel asks of all of us on immigration. Okay, so they say that he persecuted Bishop Strickland and appointed McElroy, right? That's going to be from their perspective. Other people are going to be like, no, Strickland got what he deserved. There's differences of opinion in the Catholic Church about that, right? And there's a pretty big mix, right? Some people you love Bishop Strickland, think that he was given the short end of the stick. Others hate him, think that he got what came to him. There's some people in between, somewhere in between there. They're obviously pro Strickland, so they're going to be against him here, especially for this. As head of the Congregation for Bishops, Prevost was instrumental in the removal of Bishop Strickland from Tyler, Texas, and the leading French conservative bishop, Dominique Ray, from his diocese. Meanwhile, he has placed openly heterodox bishops in sees worldwide. The most notorious is Cardinal McElroy, who was installed as Archbishop of Washington despite being implicated in the cover-up of sexual abuse by Cardinal McCarrick, they claim. I suspect since Father James Altman is also very critical of McElroy, he would then be critical of Pope Leo XIV, but I don't know what he has said just yet. James Altman, and seeing if I can pull him up here, maybe real quick on Twitter to see if he said anything. Let's see. Okay. Okay, I'm not seeing any comments yet on Twitter. I suspect that when his comments come out, they're going to be severely critical of Pope Leo XIV. George says, I thought you would be sleeping. No, I do not take naps, even if I wake up and start streaming for 10 hours at 4:30 in the morning. Still don't take naps. So, no, there was no chance I was going to sleep. Back to the issue here. Okay, so they say he banned communion on the tongue and promoted invalid confessions. They say during COVID, Provost imposed, and then they give the article in question, imposed receiving communion on the hand and confession by telephone, which is both invalid and sacrilegious. Let's go over quickly the Provost imposed communion on the hand. That's according to this article that they are quoting from Info Vaticana that says that. And so if you look here, it says Provost arrived in the Vatican, little known about him beyond details of his handling of the pandemic, such as requiring communion in the hand and requiring confessions to be conducted by telephone to avoid physical contact. I do just have to point out maybe some inconsistency here. I just, in all fairness, with all due respect. Okay, so LifeSite News is critical of him for imposing communion on the hand during COVID. Guess who else stood for that? None other than Cardinal Robert Sarah, the main one that LifeSite News and all of the rad trads have been pushing for. They wanted Cardinal Sarah. Cardinal Sarah did that exact same thing, as I've pointed out numerous times, which you can see right here. So when he was the prefect for the dicastery over divine worship, this particular note even quotes Cardinal Sarah on that, an August 15th, 2020 protocol approved for publication by Pope Francis in times of difficulty like wars and pandemics. Bishops and episcopal conferences can give provisional norms which must be obeyed. And the context was specifically prohibiting reception of Holy Communion on the tongue during public celebration of the Holy Mass during times of pandemic. That was none other than Cardinal Sarah, who is very opposed to communion on the hand and calls it satanic and a diabolic plot against the church. The same Cardinal Sarah who said that was the same one who said bishops have the authority and right to forbid communion on the tongue and require communion on the hand during the pandemic. So my thing is, they cheer on Cardinal Sarah, even though this is there. Maybe they don't know about that, or they just swept it under the rug. But then they critique Pope Leo XIV when he was bishop for the very same thing. So I just kind of have to point out there appears to be a little bit of a double standard on that particular point. Okay, so confession by telephone, they other than the article that just claims that, there's no actual evidence for it, so it may or may not be true. Maybe that is true, I don't know. Other than this article, I don't have anything else to go with. But it appears that the church so far has deemed that confession by telephone is invalid. It's interesting. Some Eastern Orthodox bishops have no problem with that, but right now, the policy of the Vatican is that that's invalid. So he also reposted a call for the abortion-tainted COVID-19 vaccines to be available for all, and a USCCB post that called getting vaccinated an act of love. So this was him reposting Archbishop Gomez that says, may God grant us the grace to face COVID-19 with strength, ensuring that vaccines are available for all so that we can all get immunized. So if you were very critical of Pope Francis on the question of vaccines, you'll likely be critical of him here. If you were in favor of Pope Francis on vaccines, you'll be in favor of Leo XIV. So it just kind of depends on where you land on that question. Support of synodality in the synodal church, they're going to sound the alarm here and say that this is a bad sign, because he is very much in favor of a synodal modeled church, which people will define differently. Of course, the Synod of Bishops defined it in an Orthodox sense, that way that the average person defines it. They would define it in a way that deviates from Catholic ecclesiology, and so they would see it as heterodox in nature. So they say a strong supporter of Francis's radical agenda. Provost supports synodality. He suggests that synodality is the solution to the current polarization currently gripping the church. He dismissed those who prefer the security of answers already experienced in the past. But then likewise, you can find a few quotes where he's all about, securing the doctrines of the past and stuff like that. So Prevost restated this goal during his speech from the Logia on his first public appearance following the conclave, in which he said, "We want to be a synodal church." So, if you're against synod on synodality, you'll probably be critical of him here. If you're in favor of it, you'll probably be in favor of him here. So that kind of lets you know where LifeSite News stands on him so far and where he stands on these matters. Now, here's a quick clip from Glenn Beck and Bishop Strickland having a conversation about Provost now Leo XIV. Let's listen to it together and maybe briefly interact with it. Please let me know if you have any difficulty hearing the audio as I play this beginning now.
Who that is? Prevost. Let me see if I have him in.
Yeah, if it's Prevost, he was head of the Congregation for Bishops.
So tell me about him. What do you know about him?
Not much. He's a relatively new cardinal.
Not good that he's an American. Robert Prevost, here we have, age 69, Chicago-born. 2 years ago, Pope Francis chose him to replace Mark Ouellette as prefect of the Vatican's bishops, handling him the task of selecting the next generation of bishops. He worked many years as a missionary in Peru. He is not just considered American, but someone who headed the Commission for Latin America, seen as a reformer, but might be viewed too young for his papacy, blah, blah, blah. He's also the Archbishop in Peru. Also clouded by allegations of covering up sexual abuse claims, which were denied by his diocese. What do you know? Good guy, bad guy? Any clue? We don't have any clue on which direction he leans, except he was selected 2 years ago by Francis.
And he was, as head of the Congregation for Bishops, frankly, in my opinion, he made some really bad choices there. Or at least, I mean, of course, it was Pope Francis, but he was involved in naming bishops that I find very troubling. So we'll have to keep.
And also involved in his removal, Bishop Strickland's removal from ministry. So that's certainly going to, I suspect Bishop Strickland, regardless of whether he's right or wrong, should or shouldn't have been removed, he's personally going to not like Leo XIV because of that. And I can understand why he wouldn't like him if you've been removed from ministry by somebody. I could understand that. And that's certainly going to impact the way he sees him.
Praying.
Okay. Well, there you have it. Pope Leo the 14th.
That's an interesting name, Leo XIV.
Why?
Well, because of the connection of the predecessor, Leo XIII. He had visions of evil taking the church.
Those are not authentic, by the way. Those are not actually. Those are more apocryphal if you look deeply into them. So no, that's not accurate. But okay.
And the St. Michael prayer, the Archangel prayer, came from Leo XIII.
Yeah, the whole story about the vision that he had with all that actually isn't authentic, and I think we've explored that in a previous episode. So we'll just move past that.
He was in the mid to probably something like 1870-ish, around there was when he was Pope.
Good Pope?
Yeah, he was good. And he was strong in a lot of ways.
He also created the social doctrine of the Catholic Church, so if you're really in favor of the social doctrine of Catholicism, you'll look to him, which is likely why he chose that name.
I'm no scholar of Leo XIII, but definitely some good signals there. So it's very interesting to choose that name. And, I'm sure they'll ask him why he chose that name, but Leo XIV, there's significance there.
Okay. Bishop, thank you so much for sharing this moment with me. It's
definitely a memorable chance to talk with you, because in the midst of all this, you started off by saying white smoke.
I know.
For me, as a Catholic kid, my heart's been in my throat the whole time.
I know.
Now that we know who it is, an America Pope, I really never predicted that, because, America is so vilified in so many countries.
Yeah.
But I think the South America connection probably assisted him in that part of it.
Yeah. So. Well, maybe they got the idea from the meme from Trump.
Yeah.
Bishop, thank you so much.
Okay, so you can see visibly he's maybe a little bit hurt by that choice and isn't very happy with it, because again, he was partly responsible for having him removed from ministry, and so that's got to sting. That's got to hurt. Again, whether you're in favor of Strickland or not, you can understand why Strickland probably wouldn't be too happy with this choice, right? So maybe there will be some further comments from him on that. Maybe he's going to take a kind of a critical angle against him, especially since he and LifeSite News are usually in lockstep, and LifeSite News is going after him. I could see, his tone shifting and becoming more critical very, very soon. It could be that, certain people start to question his election and validity, and I've said that multiple times, that I do think your closet set of contests are going to question very early on, if not immediately, the validity of this election. And I did, during the live stream, show that during the third ballot they had a black smoke and then some white smoke came out, and I said, oh, get ready, this is Cardinal Siri conspiracy theory 2.0, and you'll never hear the end of it for the next 20, 40 years or so. So maybe some of the set of contest conspiracy theorists, or soon to be set of contests, will start appealing to that. You never know. Maybe they'll say Cardinal Seurat was elected and maybe he was forced out by the Lavender Mafia, and that's why there was some white smoke there. And you never know how elaborate they would get with the conspiracy theory. We had fun with that during the 10-hour live stream that I just did earlier today. So all right, anyways, let's go to this now. This is Raymond Arroyo from EWTN, has been very severely critical of Pope Francis in many ways for years. And so you can already imagine he's already very critical of the current Pope, the new Pope. But let's see what he has to say.
Peter Square. And look, it takes your breath away whenever a new pope comes out. We have to remember, this is the 267th successor of the apostle Peter, the one that Jesus gave the keys to the kingdom of heaven to. So that's what this is all about. When you look at the man himself, Robert Prevost, now Leo XIV, you have to step back, because the one caveat I'm going to add to everything I'm about to say, Will, is this. When a man begins to assume this office of the papacy, it inevitably changes him. There's something that happens to the personality, even the teaching of the man. So we can't say that the man that he was will necessarily be the pope that he'll be tomorrow. But here are the general outlines. He's from Chicago. He's known as more of a progressive in the church. If you liked Pope Francis, you're going to love Leo XIV. That would be my bumper sticker on this, okay? He's very much in the same model. Even in his speech there at the Loggia today, he said we have to be a synodal church, to go out and encounter and dialogue with each other in the world, that we have to walk with one another. That is classic Pope Francis lingo, and I'll tell you what it means, because who knows what synodal means? They don't even know. The bishops don't even know. What it basically means is to democratize and open up the decision-making in the church, even the practice and the doctrine of the faith. Pope Francis believed not just bringing cardinals together to help him shape the teaching or perfect it for the time, but inviting everybody in, including atheists and non-believers and young people and, a selected hand group of priests he liked and a few other cardinals, but not the entire College of Cardinals. And part of the result of this particular Pope, Will, is because Pope Francis chose 108 of the 133 electors. So you imagined it might tend this way, even though you thought, well, they're from such far-flung parts of the world, they may not be ideologically coherent. But it turns out they may have been. One of the major, I've spoken to a couple of cardinals since the election. Money was a big issue, Will. The church is basically broke. The Wall Street Journal did a piece the other day. $2 billion in deficits, $400 million in pension debts that they can't pay off. So a lot of these African cardinals and Asian cardinals and those from other parts of the world thought, get an American in here. They can help clean up and get the books in order, make the trains run on time. This guy's been working here for 3 years in the Vatican. He's head of the Bishop's Dicastery, Robert Prevost, now Pope Leo. Right. So he knows a bit of the machinations here, but he's a little bit of an outsider. So they thought maybe he can help reform the place and at least bring it to financial solvency. That's a piece of it. But there's a much bigger challenge for this Pope, Will, and that is to clarify Christian and Catholic doctrine, to make it clear. Pope Francis muddied the waters in many ways and caused a lot of confusion. One hopes Pope Leo will steady this bark of Peter.
So let me ask you this question, Raymond, based upon that important part of the papacy.
Much can be discussed there. You may agree with him, you may disagree, you may be somewhere in between. A whole lot that can be said in interaction with everything Raymond just said, and much of it has already been discussed, even here on this channel. So you might have a favorable or a critical perspective of what he just said, but that kind of lets you know where he's at. He appears to already be critical of Pope Leo XIV, which I think we kind of anticipated, right?
And I ask this with a great amount of humility, Raymond, because I am not Catholic, and I understand that the Pope is selected and ordained by God, and it is not a political office. It's not the same thing as an electing a United States senator. No. So in some ways, it's inappropriate to say, is he conservative? Is he liberal? But is he progressive?
I I hear people say that all the time. I got to respectfully disagree. Look, there's nothing wrong with saying that. There's nothing wrong, because what most people mean by that is not just political categories, which even then it's still fair to ask that question. But a lot of people use those terms in Catholic circles to refer to theological categories, and also that is fair. Maybe all you need to do is just clarify what you're talking about, politically or theologically. Maybe you need to make that distinction, but it's perfectly fair to ask that question and use those kinds of phrases and terms, in my opinion.
Francis, that seems to be the great question, and I hear you saying the answer is yes. And why that matters is where he may stand and where he may lead his flock on issues as far and as wide as climate change, on DEI, on LGBTQ, on a whole.
By the way, he's very, very much in favor of ecology, and where Pope Francis was on the question of not just, again, the immigration, but ecology. So the emphasis that you saw with Pope Francis on ecology, it seems he is very much in line with that. So if you love that about Pope Francis, you'll love that about him. You hated that about Pope Francis, you'll hate it about him. If you're somewhere in the middle, you'll be somewhere in the middle here.
Whole host of issues, and we wonder, where will this new vision be for the Catholic Church?
Well, hope springs eternal, Will, even in the eternal city. And here's what I'd say. It's a mixed bag. The record is a mixed bag. But there are indications. When you saw the Pope come out today, okay, he was wearing the traditional mezzetto, that red garment, atop his white cassock. That's kind of a cry back to the past. That's a wink at tradition. Right. So a lot of traditionalists and conservative people said, oh, look, he's dressing like a Pope. We frankly haven't seen this in 12 years with Pope Francis.
And that's why some might say, like, he's a little bit more traditional liturgically than Pope Francis, but then you saw people say, no, he did communion in the hand only during COVID. Again, Cardinal Sarah ruled in favor of that too, for communion in the hand only. But putting that issue to the side, some people use that against him liturgically, and so some people might say he's just slightly a little bit more traditional than Pope Francis liturgically, but maybe not a whole lot, maybe not in favor to reverse traditionalist custodes, which I think is what a lot of people who are speaking about the liturgy are hoping for here.
So maybe Leo will be, as he mentioned in his speech today, a bridge builder. One hopes, right. I mean, when you look at his Twitter feed, he was for open borders in the United States and kind of took pot shots at J.D. Vance and the Trump administration. But look, all popes are going to support migrants, support the poor, support peace. That is, their heart goes out to humanity. That's with the job. Right. Jesus would do the same. I don't know if he'd get so political in that.
Well, why did they severely criticize Pope Francis for that? With all due respect, if you recognize that, why were they so critical of Pope Francis for that? I just have to ask that, in fairness here.
They're going to have to be careful of. But maybe Pope Leo can bring together the broken parts of this church and Christianity and our society and offer a countercultural moral clarion call that I think we need now. Let's pray and hope that's what becomes of this pontificate and all these other concerns fade away in the coming days. I hope that's what
Raymond
happens.
Arroyo, I'm glad to have you today live from Rome. Thank you, Raymond.
There he is, Raymond Arroyo, so you kind of know where he lands on the matter. We got a whole lot more ground to cover here, a whole lot more comments, reactions, including comments from the new Pope's brother. Yes, his brother is commenting. Let's take a look at one of the comments from James Martin, very controversial figure in Catholicism, very much in favor of promoting the LGBTQ crowd and agenda and even Pride Month. And some would suggest even dissent from the Catholic Church's teaching on same-sex acts. And so a very controversial figure here, kind of known as the Pride Mass priest, if you will, pro-LGBTQ priest. So Jesuit, and was a friend of Pope Francis, who Pope Francis would often meet with him, give him personal letters and stuff like that. And a lot of people were upset and even resented that friendship that they had and were concerned about it. And so, well, it turns out, Father James Martin is actually very, very much likes so far the new Pope Leo XIV, which some might say is inconsistent because he has spoken of same-sex acts in marriages in a critical way, but so did Pope Francis. And so it might just be nothing new really for Father James Martin. So let's take a look at him and see what he has to say.
Hey everyone, it's Jim Martin, and just sort of stunned by the news of the election of Pope Leo XIV, former Cardinal Prevost. I got to know him a little bit at the Synod. He was at my table, and I know him to be a down-to-earth, kind, modest, reserved guy.
Maybe he's playing this angle not because he necessarily agrees with him theologically on same-sex acts, but maybe he's playing this angle to try to make him look like he's pro-LGBTQ, to make him look friendly to the LGBTQ crowd. Maybe that's kind of what's going on here with James Martin. I don't know.
Hardworking, decisive, not afraid of speaking his mind. It's a great choice. He brings a wealth of experience from being a missionary in Peru, a bishop in Peru. He speaks, of course, perfect Spanish and Italian and English, of course, with a Chicago accent. He was the prior general of the Augustinians. I'm standing on top of the Augustinian rooftop right now. And he was also in charge of formation. I also think it's really important to note the choice of the name, Leo XIV, a nod to Leo XIII, who's the father of Catholic social teaching. So just an amazing choice. Surprising, but when you look back on it, makes perfect sense. He was the head of the dicastery of bishops, and so a lot of the cardinals would have known him from there. So I rejoice in this selection of Pope Leo XIV. I ask you all to pray for him. He's going to need our prayers. And God bless Leo XIV. God bless the Augustinians. And from the rooftop of the Augustinians here in Rome, God bless you all.
All right. Thank you for that. And thank you, Gospel Simplicity, as a comment there in the chat. He says, priest says something nice about the new Pope. Gasp. I appreciate your comment, Austin. I think what people are concerned about in the case of Father James Martin here, the argument that they're using is kind of, Father James Martin, incredibly progressive, pro-LGBT, Pride Mass kind of guy, all in favor of celebrating Pride Month. He's very vocal and open about that. And there's some deeply troubling aspects to him theologically and the way he's conducted himself in these affairs. And so whenever he's, speaking really positive about somebody, people are concerned, right? Because they think, okay, maybe that somehow signals that this is a bad person. If he's speaking well of them, maybe that's that's kind of where they're coming from on that. Hopefully that helps kind of give you some context as to why some people are concerned about him saying that. Okay. So that's where Father James Martin stands on the matter. Trump seems to be happy, seemingly. I don't know why. It seems like he's critical of Trump. So, but it seems that he has no major issues with him so far, and may actually meet with him soon. So here's what he says.
Are you planning to meet the Pope in the near future?
Mr. President.
They've already called. When is that? Do you have a timing in mind?
They have already spoken to us, and we'll see what happens. But again, to have the Pope from the United States of America, that's a great honor. That's a great honor.
Sir, has your message voice? Sir, has your...
I'm watching, and they said he's from America. I said, that's great.
All right, so he says it's great that he's from America. He's spoken to the Vatican already, and they might be meeting soon. And by the way, thank you so much, Richard, for gifting those memberships to 5 people there. You're awesome. Thank you so much for that. Let's see who else we got here. So that was Trump's reaction. Now we have Cardinal Burke's reaction, very popular amongst conservative Catholics and also traditionalist Catholics. And so Cardinal Burke says, join me in thanking our Lord for the election of Pope Leo XIV, successor of Peter, as the shepherd of the church. The shrine of Our Lady of Guadalupe at La Crosse has particularly strong bond with the Pope, especially through its affiliation with the Papal Basilica of St. Mary Major. I urge all pilgrims and friends of the shrine to pray fervently for Leo XIV, that our Lord, through the intercession of our Lady of Guadalupe, St. Peter Apostle, and Pope St. Leo the Great, will grant him abundant wisdom, strength, and courage to do all that our Lord is asking him in these tumultuous times. May God bless Pope Leo and grant him many years. Sorry, I'm having difficulty reading. I'm just still exhausted. 10 hours from 4:40 in the morning, and just took a short break here. And now we're back to live streaming after 10 hours. So I'm a little exhausted. So I apologize for the misreading there. But yeah, so he's saying, pray for the successor of Pope Francis here. Let's see what Bishop Barron is saying. He just dropped this one, it looks like, less than an hour ago. So let's see what he is up to.
Special greetings to our Word on Fire family from St. Peter's Square on this extraordinary night. One of the strangest days of my life when I think about it. I was doing some commentary up with NBC up on the hill there, and we weren't expecting smoke of any kind to be coming at about 6 p.m. And I'm just talking away to the interviewer, and suddenly behind me I hear this roar. I thought, wait a minute, that couldn't possibly be white smoke. Of course it was. So everybody was shocked. We all thought, since it happened so quickly, it would be Cardinal Parolin. He was sort of the favorite. He was talked about the most. We thought, okay, they all quickly came to accept him. So then I had to race across town to get to Fox News. I was doing a piece with them. And on the way, we found out that it was not Parolin, but Prevost, the American, who was taking the wonderful name of Leo XIV. So it was just kind of flabbergasting, honestly. I've known him for a little while. He was at the 2 synods that I was at the last 2 Octobers. We have a Chicago background in common. I talked to him, a number of times. He's I would say, quietly competent person, not a flashy personality, a man of great intelligence, prayerfulness, obviously, and then this wide experience we've all been talking about. Missionary in Latin America, canon law background, administrative work. He ran the Augustinian province in Chicago, then worldwide. The Augustinian experience giving him a real global experience. So, and then finally, head of the dicastery for bishops. So based here in Rome, he knows the curial world. And then in that position, he knew bishops all over the world. I think they just took a good look at him and said, okay, he's about the right age and he's got all of these qualities. And even though, a lot of us were saying, myself included, they'll never elect an American pope. Well, they did. And I think they just recognized the qualities he has. My prayer is that it has a, vivifying effect on the church in America. So it's an extraordinary day, a surprising day, a great day. So let's all pray for our new Pope, Leo XIV, and God bless you all.
Sorry, y'all. I apologize. I have been on mute there the whole time since Bishop Barron got off. I apologize. I muted it just so I'm not over here making sounds and everything in the background. He seems to be on the whole pretty positive, about the new pope. So that's his take on it. I did want to quickly get Gospel Simplicity and Austin Suggs follow a comment. He says, on the one hand, I totally get it's totally fair. On the other hand, that is Father James Martin, in reference to the new pope, said that he's down to earth, kind, reserved, seems like good qualities. Yeah, I get you. I hear you. I think what the people who are, concerned about the comments, where they're coming from, is that they kind of see any kind of positive signal from Father James Martin as somehow a person who's favorable to the LGBTQ agenda, whether that's legit or not, whether that's a fair argument or not, whether that's true or not. That's just where they're coming from on that one. So certainly just bringing it to y'all's attention. Y'all are welcome to agree or disagree with people's reaction on Father James Martin and all that. Here's another one that you might be interested in. This one is, the fact that Cardinal Parolin was near him on the Logia is concerning, as is the fact that he was the prefect for the dicastery for bishops when Bishop Strickland was removed. I can see some people saying your physical proximity to Parolin doesn't really mean anything. Doesn't really signal whether you're good or bad. Others might look at that as a signal that somehow this is indication that he's a bad guy. Seems that he's taken that approach. We're going to also take a look here at Steve Bannon on Piers Morgan reacting, as well as the Pope's brother, John Prevost, reacting to this election here. I do want to remind y'all, hit that subscribe button and hit that like button if you haven't already. Okay, let's continue here. Let me go ahead and share my screen, and let's see what Steve Bannon is saying on Piers Morgan.
I do think one of the dark horses, and I think, unfortunately, he's one of the most progressive, is Cardinal Prevost. I don't think he's getting enough play. He is certainly on the short list. as being, and I think it's pretty shocking given how the contempt they hold the American church. The American church gives so much money, they're afraid it has too much power. So they've never really wanted to have an American pope. But my understanding is Prevost is one of the ones closest to Francis ideologically. He's also had tremendous experience in Latin America. And so he's one of the ones on the short list. I'm a big believer that Cardinal Sarah from Africa would be a perfect selection right now for this moment in the church. But I will tell everybody, this is anybody's game right now between Parolin, one of the traditionalists. You have no earthly idea how this is going to turn out. That's why I think this run up is so important. And it's interesting that it's ironic. It's going to take place. It's going to kick off, I think, on the either the day of or the day before the 80th anniversary of victory in Europe. So it's very symbolic of what's coming together here in the first part of May.
Okay. So that may have actually been done before he was elected. So kind of Piers Morgan's own take after he was elected was happy because he says that Piers says that Leo XIV is progressive and will continue the progressive, as he describes it, agenda of Pope Francis in the previous pontificate. So he sees this as a good thing because he's kind of progressive Catholic himself. Piers Morgan. Some people didn't know he's Catholic. Yeah, he's kind of more of a liberal leaning, progressive leaning Catholic there. Ray says, bro, you're a machine. Yeah, putting in work, man. Let's see what the Pope's brother is saying. This is John Prevost, the former Cardinal Prevost's brother, right? Well, he's still his brother. He's no longer the Cardinal, though, right? Let's see what they say.
To be honest, there hasn't been a chance to think about it because it's been constant phone calls, emails, messages, interviews. So I don't think it's really sunk in. It's kind of surreal. It's great pride. This is an awesome thing in the sense that the first, not only Pope, but first American Pope from Chicago, and a relative.
Not a lot of people can say, my brother is the Pope.
That's correct. And I can now say it.
So when you found out, obviously you have pride, that's your brother.
Mm-hmm.
Did you expect this?
To tell you the truth, no, because I kept hearing there will never be an American Pope just because the politics in the United States has too much world power now. They don't need also into the church. So I did not expect it. But when I heard he was in a group of 3,
somebody got on.
I thought, well, this could happen.
When did you hear that part? And when did you know that he was maybe one of the finalists?
Maybe like a day or two after the Pope died. And they were talking about who are the runner-ups and who's in line next to be Pope. And I think I might have heard something about that at that point. Then I spoke to him Tuesday before he went into the conclave, and he just kept saying, no, that's not true, that's not true. So he's pushing it away, hoping that it would go away. It didn't go away.
When you actually heard that it was your brother who was selected, where were you? Were you watching television? Were you on the phone?
I was watching TV because I was reading a book. I got a text that said there's white smoke. So I went down and turned the TV on. No one knew at that point who the Pope was, but there was white smoke, so we knew. So I was watching. I called my niece just to make sure she knew. Then we just sat there and watched it. And then she said, look, the curtains are moving. I said, oh, something's coming up. And then that French bishop came out who was going to announce it. And we heard the name and she screamed. And I said, oh my gosh, here we go. And then it has been nonstop phones and everything else.
The world will now call your brother Pope.
That's right.
You arguably know him better than most people. What kind of person is he?
A regular run-of-the-mill person. I think because he was trained in missionary work in South America for so many years, he will be looking out for the disenfranchised. He will be looking out for the poor. He will be looking out for those that don't have a voice. So I think he will follow in St. Francis. Pope Francis.
I was gonna say, how is he different from Pope Francis? Or will he be different?
I don't know that you'll see a big difference. He met Pope Francis before he was Pope when he was in Argentina and my brother was in Peru. So that's how the connection began. I think they kind of believed in the same issues. So I don't know that there'll be much difference. He might prove me wrong. But I don't see there'll be much of a tradition breaking the tradition of Pope Francis.
Attending and being part of the church community and that includes this outside of Chicago, how did that impact you guys?
See, he wasn't around a whole lot because after 8th grade graduation, he went immediately to the seminary. So he was in Holland, Michigan at the Augustinian Seminary for 4 years. And then he went into Villanova University, which is an Augustinian university. So he wasn't home a lot. Summer vacations, he was home. growing up as kids, I think we were just regular kids and didn't really think about that kind of stuff. The interesting thing, I don't know how many people find it interesting, but when he was in first grade, a woman across the street that we used to play with the kids, and a woman down the street said he would be the first American Pope. In first grade, they said that.
First grade. A random
he
woman
knew,
told him he would be the Pope?
Well, they were neighbors. We knew them. But yes, he knew at that age he was going to be a priest.
How you feeling?
Okay, so wow, that's fascinating. Actually, hearing the brother of the new pope and kind of getting his take on the matter. Got some more reactions for you. I do have to show you something really, really awesome. In addition to hearing from a family member, the pope. Let me show you something really cool. A short that I posted just right before I went live. They actually have footage of him when he was elected pope in the Sistine Chapel. Somehow they got footage of him in the Sistine Chapel. I didn't know they could have cell phones in there. Somebody had a cell phone. I don't know if they snuck it, if they were allowed at that point. I don't know, but they got actual footage of him in the Sistine Chapel. Check this out. Somebody got on film the moment the new Pope, Pope Leo XIV, was elected in the Sistine Chapel. Check it out. So yeah, I don't know how they got that. That's pretty wild. So it's pretty cool actually seeing that. So back to some reactions here that are worth taking a quick look at. By the way, here is something really fascinating. Share my screen. Here he is. Either as a bishop or cardinal, most likely cardinal, wearing Pope Francis's pectoral cross. Pope Francis known for this pectoral cross. Once again, kind of a signal that he's going to be a Pope Francis kind of 2.0, a Pope Francis, the one who carries out the legacy of Pope Francis and continues it in the church, which is what we suspected would be the case. I told y'all over and over, they're going to elect somebody like that, right? Who will probably, my words to y'all today, go watch the 10-hour stream, watch yesterday, watch everything. I told y'all what will happen is they will elect somebody who is kind of a Francis 2.0, might even take that name. I was wrong about the name, but would be a Pope Francis kind of guy who will carry out that legacy, but probably will be a little less controversial in the media. Maybe he won't be, rocking the boat in the media as the previous pontificate. I suspect that's going to be true because when we're looking at his social media profile, he's not saying a lot. He has been critical of Trump and J.D. Vance and a few others, but still keeps a low profile on the whole. So that tells me he's not huge into getting in your face, getting in the media, which means you're probably not going to be causing a whole lot of media drama. Then again, who knows? They may bring that drama to him, even if he doesn't look for it, right? So maybe that's the case, and we'll find out pretty soon. But yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting. So again, if you love Pope Francis, you'll love him. If you hate Pope Francis, you'll probably hate him. If you're somewhere in the middle, you'll probably be somewhere in the middle here. Let's take a look briefly here from MSNBC and what they're saying very quickly here. This came up on my social media feed and looked like it might be interesting. Let's see.
I think what's happened here is it seems as though, now I haven't talked to everybody, but everybody that I sense is happy. They're really pleased about the fact that he was picked, not because he was an American, but he was picked because of his concern for the poor, his concern for the downtrodden, and a sort of a continuation of Francis without him being Francis. And we should make no mistake about it. Francis was able to put him into certain positions that allowed him to be in a position of being able to be selected Pope. And so I think what you have here is somebody who can maybe pull both sides together and somebody that's going to speak with a kind heart. And I believe we not only need this in America, but we need this worldwide to remember the love of Jesus and the love of our Father. And I think that becomes more and more attractive. And I guarantee you tonight, there are people who have never paid attention to this who are saying, I wonder what this whole Pope thing is all about. And maybe this is pretty good. So I'm thrilled with it. I'm happy about it. I think it's a great step forward. And but I'm less concerned that he's an American as opposed to the way he looks at the world and the way he looks at people.
Okay. Now we actually have something from Bishop Conley, who has weighed in on the new Pope, his initial thoughts and reaction. I haven't heard from Bishop Conley in a while, so fascinated by this. I want to see what he has to say.
First of all, tell me your initial reaction to hearing the announcement today.
I was absolutely shocked. I was very surprised. I just didn't think it was possible for an American to become Pope, the successor of St. Peter. So that was the very first reaction I had, was shock.
What do we know about the new Pope?
Well, we know that he's multilingual. He's been doing missionary work in South America, so he's got a global sense of the church. He's been working in Rome now for a number of years. So, but he has roots in Chicago. He's a member of the Augustinian order, so he's deeply steeped in the theology of St. Augustine. He did a doctorate on St. Augustine. He's a canon lawyer, so he knows the law of the church. He's got a license in canon law. And, I was talking to a brother bishop. I've never met him myself, but I was talking to a brother bishop today, just a little bit ago, and he was telling me that when he was first named a bishop, he went to the new bishop school, and one of the most impressive speakers during that week that he spent in Rome was Cardinal Prevost. And he said he was just struck by what a decent human being he was. Just what a decent human being he was. He said when you meet somebody and you just think this one's authentic. And he said he had 3 different private conversations with him over the course of the week. And every single one of the conversations, he said, he walked away from it saying, this is really a good person.
What is your hope for what Pope Leo XIV will bring to the church worldwide and in the United States?
My hope is that he'll bring unity in the church as much as he can, to unify the church, and stability to the church, drawing upon the great teachings of his predecessors, but just to bring a sense of confidence and stability in what the church has to offer. Because I think that people are looking for that, the permanent things that you can bank on and count on, like Jesus Christ and his message, the gospel of the passion, death, and resurrection of Christ, and the hope of a future. And that's what I think we need more than now, especially more than ever now, because young people are looking for that. And I think that's why young people will respond, to someone like that who will bring that hope and that strength and that joy to the papacy.
Interesting thoughts there. Actually, very helpful to get his reaction. Again, I hadn't heard from Bishop Conley in a while, so it's pretty fascinating to see that he weighed in on this, publicly. Looking through the chat here, let's see. Thank you so much for that super sticker. 10 hours plus. You're running on the Holy Spirit alone. Thank you so much. Yeah. So 10 hours on the previous stream. Now 1 hour on this one. Wild ride. But I had to sneak in this reaction to the reactions to kind of give you an idea where some people are at. Some people are favorable. Some people are very critical. Some people are somewhere in between, which is kind of what I told y'all would happen is that, if you have somebody who, carries out Pope Francis's legacy, what you're going to have is more of the same. The critics who are critical of Pope Francis will be critical of him. Those who are in favor of Pope Francis will be in favor of him. And here, when I say critics, I'm talking about progressives, traditionalists, everybody. As I told y'all, progressives won't believe or don't believe, it seems already, that he's progressive enough. So they won't say he's progressive enough, won't feel that he is. Traditionalists won't feel that he's traditionalist enough. Might that be a good thing? Might you want somebody who's kind of somewhere in the middle? Some would argue yes, because that's going to unify the church. Others say, well, things are so polarized, this might not help because maybe just nobody's going to be happy with them. I don't know. I guess we'll find out pretty soon here, right? We're already seeing some interesting reactions. Thunder Thumbs. Travs are hoping he will fully restore access to the TLM. What do you think? I don't think that he will. I think he'll likely carry out Pope Francis's position on the question like Traditionalist Custodes. But so in particular cases, he might restrict at the parish level the Latin Mass. In other cases, he might allow for it, like Pope Francis did. In some cases, he allowed for it parish level. In other cases, he shut it down. They took it on a case-by-case basis, the dicastery under Pope Francis. He'll likely do the same. Are you going to get a full reversal of the reversal of the reversal of the reversal? No. I mean, Paul VI kind of reversed some things, right? Trent and others reversed some liturgical things. Then Paul VI reversed some reversals, and then John Paul II kind of reversed some of that, and then Benedict kind of reversed some of that, and then Francis reversed some of that, and then is he going to reverse some more? Unlikely. I think that if he's closely aligned with Pope Francis, as we have seen, he'll likely just kind of, it'll be more of the same. So no, I don't think that this is going to be the salvation that we're hoping for on that, for better or worse. Whether that's a good thing or bad thing, debatable. I'm just telling you what the reality is, whether you like it or not, whether I like it or not. I'm just telling you what I think it's going to be. Was the main thought I had on his first appearance that he looked a little bit more like Pope Benedict, and that's a good sign when it comes to liturgically. But then again, he might just be just a step up above Pope Francis liturgically and not that much more, right? But also remember, Benedict never celebrated the Latin Mass as Pope. So, people kind of look to him as this high church liturgy guy. And, he did say some favorable things at some point. But when he was cardinal and prior to that, but when he became Pope, he never celebrated the Latin Mass. And so, will he be a Benedict, however, liturgically? I don't think so. I think he'll just be like a notch above Pope Francis. That's the impression I get. Still no clarity on the premature white smoke earlier today. Don't encourage them. It's Siri conspiracy theory 2.0. You'll hear about it for the next 40 years of your life. Just wait. If you don't hear about it right now immediately, you'll hear about it in 10 years. I mean, this Cardinal Siri conspiracy theory, what? The events took place in 1958, allegedly. We don't hear about it probably until the late 70s, early 80s. So give them 30 years and then they'll be going over this. Well, you see over here, it was black and then it was white. And so what really happened is Sarah was elected, but then they forced him to abdicate. And instead they got this anti-pope, Pope Leo XIV, and he's a false pope. He's a Bergoglian, and some people are going to come with that. I guarantee you 100%. I told y'all when it happened. I told y'all live as soon as I saw that. Yeah, this is where it's going to go. Thank you for the super sticker. Will the new pope elevate the Sistine Chapel Seagull to cardinal? And I'm curious if Bishop Barron gets elevated to cardinal. I think that look, I already thought that Bishop Barron would be made cardinal at some point anyway, right? American Pope, yeah, I think he'll be made cardinal, probably sooner rather than later now. I think we could already expect that with such a visible figure in the media. He was more visible as a priest than most bishops. Still more visible as a bishop than most cardinals. Yeah, they'll make him a cardinal, of course they will. Michael, you're just smoke splaining. I'm telling you, I'm a smoke splainer. I try to tell y'all that's what they're gonna call me. Here it is, book title, Reinfiltration. How the Lavender Mafia forced out Cardinal Sarah and imposed Bergoglio 2.0. Subtitle, A Refutation of the Smoke Splainers. There it is. I want royalties on that. Father Sean in the chat says, there is the work of the Holy Spirit here. Mission Church is a big thing. Thank you so much for that. What else we got here? I want a smoke explainer t-shirt. Jorge says, you got it. You got it. We're going to make that happen. We're going to make it happen, Captain. Any thoughts on them being more reserved? Yeah, I told y'all that's probably a good thing. I don't know. The last pontificate, in some ways, with all due respect, was relatively bombastic in the media, right? Pope Francis didn't always do himself any favors in the media, and sometimes the media twisted him. Many times the media twisted him, but he also didn't do himself favors in some cases, and he was not very good at clarifying himself after a huge controversy, if he attempted to at all. That was a rocky ride because of that, as I've been upfront with y'all all along about the previous pontificate. Always been a criticism of mine that I've offered constructively and respectfully about Pope Francis, among other criticisms, with all due respect. And since he already is very less visible in the media, as we can tell from his track record, because there are already, you can see there's not a whole lot about him at all. That says he keeps relatively a low profile. That'll probably be good. Things need to calm down in the media. Will they? I don't know. I think the critics will still continue to be critical. I think the secular media is going to go after him over the question of abuse and did he handle things properly. And they're going to try to twist him as some extreme progressive. Already in some areas, he is kind of progressive leaning. I think they're going to want to go further, though. They're not going to be happy with what he's done already. They're going to want to see him as like pro everything that they stand for and everything the world stands for. So they'll try to interpret him in that way, sometimes fairly, sometimes unfairly. I think they're going to, however, since they don't have a moral code of conduct and very low ethics, they will likely twist his words to make him more progressive than he is. You'll have that from secular media, and you'll likely have that from the critics that who are critical of Pope Francis. Even if they're more on the traditionalist end of the spectrum, they too will also criticize him and will probably interpret him in the worst possible way, interpret him with the hermeneutic of rupture. You know, I don't think they'll give him the same benefit of the doubt that they would give a Cardinal Sarah or a Cardinal Burke or a Cardinal Mueller. I don't think they'll do that. I think they'll just kind of take the angle. He's a progressive, so we're going to interpret him in the worst possible way. So you're going to get that from both groups, from the critics within the church and from the secular media, just like you had with the previous pontificate. But it might be a little less aggressive. He might not open himself up for as much criticism in the media. Again, even if you stay out of it, they're going to bring the drama your way, whether you like it or not. I can tell you that right now. If they bring drama to me and I stay out of certain issues and they still bring it, they'll do it to the Pope, of course, right? So, and how much more would they do it to a Pope than just a random YouTuber or something? So, I think even if the Pope is less aggressive in the media, less in the spotlight in the media, causing less controversies in the media, open to less criticism in the media, people are still going to bring that drama to him. Because I think they have an axe to grind. I think they have an agenda, and you're going to see that. Kin says Francis was a heretic. So you got people who thought Pope Francis was a heretic, other things that he was a saint, other people think he's somewhere in between. Very polarized. A lot of people were polarized on Pope Francis. I suspect that's going to be the case here. They're going to be polarized on him. Michael, can you show the video where Pope Francis said no to same-sex blessings? Last time I did it, 60 Minutes gave me the copyright strike thing, so I'm not doing it again. But yeah, I have shown it many times. It's easily accessible. Would ever have Marshall on to debate? I mean, he was offered $10,000 to debate me and was silent on it. So, I mean, I guess I'm not really interested in debates anyway, though. But I was willing at the time, but he gave the silent treatment, so it's like whatever. I'm not too interested in debates. I think I'm more interested in discussions with people. I think the discussions are a little bit more productive than debates, personally. I'll still host debates on occasion. I've been in a number of debates before, but I feel that discussions are more productive, even with it's somebody that you don't agree with. I think you get more out of that than a formalized, structured debate. That's my opinion. So I think it would be a lot better to have conversations with people, which I've always been willing to do. Most people haven't been willing to have conversations with me, however. Thank you. Thank you for that super sticker, though. John says heretic explaining. Well, there will be a lot of people who accuse people of that in this papacy, as I told y'all. What else we got? Kilo says, Michael, verify that same-sex blessings was not endorsed by Pope Francis. Pope Francis or any other pope never taught heresy, period. Well, those are two different questions. Did he endorse same-sex blessings? Yes and no. Depends on what you mean by that. He put it, and Fernandez put it, and the document put it as same-sex couples, the persons receiving the blessing, but not their union. That's how they put it. So some are going to say that's not a same-sex blessing because it depends on what you mean. Do you mean the persons who are in the union or the union itself? The subject, the persons. What's the object of the blessing? The persons of the union. If you say it's the persons, some are going to say that's not same-sex blessings. Others will say, yes, it is, but in that qualified sense. Others will say, well, no, he's talking about blessing the union. Well, he explicitly denied that. The document denies it. Fernandez denies it. Some people still argue, but that's the net result. And in that case, they'll argue, yeah, that's same-sex blessings. Right? So it depends on what you mean. I've done over 70 videos on fiducia supplicans. I've said everything that could possibly be said about it. I've engaged everyone that could possibly be engaged on it. There's nothing additional that can be added to that conversation. That's been explored exhaustively already on this channel. You're welcome to go and watch those resources. Thank you for the super sticker. I like that Pope Leo is a canon lawyer. That's an A+. Can be. In fairness, I've seen some bishops who are canon lawyers who, I'm sorry, they don't appear to know a whole lot about canon law. So I kind of wonder, gosh, what happened there? Then again, some canon lawyers, and they seem to be solid on canon law, right? So it just kind of depends. But just because somebody's canon lawyer doesn't mean they're solid on canon law. Just like somebody who has a theology degree isn't always solid in theology. I guess it's kind of the same thing. Do we know his view on Latin Mass? No. Somebody said that he refused to implement Traditionis Custodes in his diocese. I have seen no evidence for that. And that doesn't make sense, doesn't even go with the character of what we've seen so far. That doesn't sound right. I'm calling bluff on that one, especially since no evidence was produced, and this doesn't sound like it passes a smell test in light of what we've seen so far. Yeah, I'm saying that's bogus. Unless you can produce evidence or receipts for that, I stand by that. That's bogus. But if you can produce evidence or receipts, hey, I'm willing to examine that honestly and stand corrected. James says, I was thinking Cardinal Sarah earlier today. I did a number of videos, one specifically on whether Cardinal Sarah would be elected, and I showed the difficulties if he had been elected. When you have somebody like Cardinal Sarah who says the papal magisterium teaches heresy, and then they're over the papal magisterium after that, that's going to cause problems. When you have previous popes who deemed predecessors to be heretics, like Honorius, so Leo II deemed his predecessor to be a heretic at the Sixth Ecumenical Council, which ironically was the same ecumenical council that affirmed papal infallibility and also said that Honorius wasn't a heretic several sessions prior to that, but then later condemned him as a heretic, which I've spoken about at length. Did they contradict themselves or not? That's a whole discussion. Leo II condemned his predecessor Honorius as a heretic. Some have pointed out that was a mistake in judgment, that he wasn't a heretic. Some question whether or not that was a magisterial act. Did he teach it, or was this private correspondence to Patriarch Sergius? Be that as it may, Hadrian II at the Eighth Ecumenical Council, 869 to 870. The Catholic Eighth Ecumenical Council, not the Eastern Orthodox one, 10 years later. Hadrian II approved the acts of the council that said that Honorius taught heresy. Again, whether it's right or wrong, accurate or not, that's what they said. How did that work out for the church? Is it not a stain on the reputation of the church to this day? Still haven't heard the end of it. 1,300 years later, still haven't heard the end of it. Protestants bring it up every day. Eastern Orthodox bring it up every day. You don't believe me? Go and talk to a Protestant. Go and talk to an Eastern Orthodox priest. You'll hear about it nonstop, ad infinitum, ad nauseum. That's all you'll ever hear about. But Honorius, but Honorius, but Honorius. And they'll usually bring it up as a refutation against papal infallibility. You never hear the end of it. So how well did that work whenever a pope labeled a predecessor pope to be a heretic, which the Eighth Ecumenical Council says the pope and the pope alone can do, and then anathematizes anybody else for doing? Didn't work out very well. How well did the Cadaver Synod, with the reversal of the reversals of the reversals of the reversals, work out with that one? Not very well. How well did Vigilius's reversals of himself work out for him? Not very well. Got excommunicated by the Fifth Ecumenical Council. Council excommunicated the Pope. Later on, scrubbed that from the Acts when they finally came to an agreement. Still didn't work out very well for Vigilius, right? Still harmed his reputation. You still hear, about it today and don't hear the end of it, as in other cases that I've pointed out before. So how would that have really worked, right? I think it would have actually undermined a lot of things, but not going to beat the dead horse here. Pedro, Michael, thank you for your hour streams today. Get it right. 11 hours, sir. Don't shortchange me here. Appreciate you, Pedro. Thank you. Mark says God will never let the Pope be a heretic. The gates of hell will not prevail. The Pope being a heretic and the Pope teaching heresy are two different things. Can the Pope be a heretic? Well, if you mean a material heretic, yeah, even Bellarmine would say yes. If you mean a former heretic, Bellarmine would argue no. And that's just being a heretic, and then what kind? Whether he teaches heresy is a different question. Whether he teaches it in his magisterium, different question. Huge debate. Some say yes, some say no. My point that I keep pointing out to you, and I will keep pointing it out, is if you've concluded that the magisterium teaches heresy, why are you still wasting your time with the Catholic Church? It seems to me you've already evaluated that the magisterium is not a reliable and sure guide. And it sounds to me like you think that you're doing better than the magisterium at theological discernment. So why are you still hanging around? But if you think that you're doing better than the magisterium, you think that you're a better standard, then why would you still continue to follow this? If it can mislead you and teach heresy one day, and you have to spot the heresy, sounds to me like that's not a very reliable guide. If you go and tell me to listen to this theologian, but the theologian is telling me heresy, I'm not going to listen to that theologian. So if you think that the magisterium teaches heresy, why are you still wasting time with it? So that's why I don't understand people who say the magisterium teaches heresy, but then they still identify as Catholic. It's like, this is a nonsensical position. My opinion, though. Thank you so much for the super sticker there, George. I think there is another super chat. Let me grab it. John, welcome. He is a new member. Good to have you on board. Danny, thank you so much. My cousin Jordan and I are both big fans of you. Hey, thanks so much. Appreciate you. Thank y'all for watching. Y'all are awesome. Catholic fam, thank you so much for that super chat here. He says, can you find out if it's true that Cardinal Prevost allowed people to confess over the phone during the pandemic and that he encouraged receiving Eucharist in hand? Well, we looked at that at the beginning of the stream, right? That's based on an article in Info Vaticana. They don't give any more citations beyond that. Is the article in Info Vaticana accurate or not? I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. It's a tertiary source referring me to a secondary source with no primary sources. So I don't know. It may be true, may not be true. I need something beyond a secondary source. That's the problem with secondary sources. If you don't cite your source and show me a primary source, I What, I got to take your word for it? I'm going to take Info Vatican's word for it? I've been burned too many times by taking people's word for it. So I have to just suspend judgment in that case and say, could be true, may not be true, don't know. I got to suspend judgment. I don't have enough information beyond secondary source, so can't really tell you. Okay. The poll shows I got a lot of level-headed fans here. I didn't even look at the results. Let's see it. Let's take a look. What's going on with that poll that I have? Take a look. What is your impression of Leo the 14th? 37% say he is just what the church needed. 10% say, oh goodness, I'm worried. 50% say, I'm not sure. Fair enough. 30% says this is the worst thing ever. Look, those of you who are saying I'm not sure, yeah, that's probably the best at this point is to say I'm not sure. Suspend judgment until you have enough evidence, right? If you're a judge in the court of law, are you going to make a quick decision? No, you're going to want to see evidence, right? Do the same with here. Do the same with everyone. Suspend judgment until you have enough evidence one way or another. I think that's the best thing to do, right? I think there's some evidence to know some answers to a few things, which I've attempted to offer today for whatever it's worth. But in a lot of things, it's just going to be a big question mark, 11 hours. Yeah. 11 and a half hours now. 10 hours in that other stream, 1 hour and 1/2 here. No point in being Catholic if you question the magisterium. Kilo says, well, questioning to an extent can be allowed by Donum Veritatis in paragraph 31, right? In rare cases, a theologian can question or even withhold assent. In rare cases, not the same as publicly dissenting. So it depends on what you mean by question. But the point is, if you're trying to say that a person who is accusing the magisterium of teaching heresy, not only did the Eighth Ecumenical Council anathematize anybody who does that, so that would appear to be morally, at the very least, prohibited. I'm not arguing canonically, but at least morally, it appears that's prohibited by an ecumenical council. But because, again, it affirms that only the Pope can judge another Pope. So only a Pope can judge a previous Pope, and they cite the case of Honorius, Leo II, with the Sixth Ecumenical Council judging Honorius. So unless you're a Pope, you don't get to judge a predecessor Pope or an existing Pope. But if you've somehow concluded that the magisterium teaches heresy, it's like you're saying that you're a more reliable guide, and you're admitting that this isn't a very reliable guide. Sounds to me like it's leading you down the wrong path, potentially to hell. Why are you wasting your time with that? If you really believe that, why do you waste your time? If I have a teacher who's teaching me heresy, I'm not wasting my time with that teacher. If I think that they're teaching heresy, why would I waste my time with them? So to me, it makes no sense for people to say I'm Catholic and still maintain that position. My personal opinion, though, feel free to disagree. What is the magisterium? John says, the teaching authority of the church, the Pope and the College of Bishops. You are welcome to sign up for my magisterium course, which is actually, coincidentally, with Catholic Polytechnic University beginning this Monday, not beginning, restarting. So go to Catholic Polytechnic University, go to certificates over here on the right, click magisterium, or go to catholicpolytechnic.org and sign up there for my introduction to the magisterium, one of 3 courses for a magisterial studies certificate program. So if you want formal training in the magisterium, what it is, all the odds and ends, history of it, how to evaluate magisterial documents, what is the magisterium, you need to sign up. But you need to do it now because it actually starts this Monday. So you go simply to the website and click here to register and then pay the tuition at the bottom. If you can't attend the sessions Monday, that's okay. Don't worry. Everything is recorded so you can watch it at your own time on your own schedule. And no workload. It's designed for people who already have a busy schedule. So certainly check that out. Catholic Polytechnic University certificate programs, magisterium, or catholicpolytechnic.org/magisterium. Y'all need to go and sign up now, though. Now, I also have plenty of free resources right here on the channel on the magisterium. So you just type in magisterium on the channel, you'll find all sorts of stuff. But there you'll have a formalized, structured courses on it. Of course, you also have my 7 ecumenical councils course at rtcourses.com and my magisterial difficulties course coming up in 2 days, exploring tensions in the documents of the church, as well as my theological notes, dogmas, doctrines, and heresies course. So rtcourses.com, you can certainly check that out. But again, free resources, plenty of them right here on the channel. Good question. Do I think Fulton Sheen's beatification will resume with an American Pope? Potentially. I could see that happening. Thunder Thumbs, thank you for the super chat. He says, does Christ's prayer that St. Peter's faith may not heal refer to protection? May not fail, I'm sorry. Refer to protection from personal loss of faith, heresy, or protecting magisterial teaching. Okay. So the way that the 6th Ecumenical Council through Agatho interpreted that in Luke 22 was his teachings. So not just his personal faith, but his magisterial acts. So go to the 6th Ecumenical Council, which I've covered numerous times here on the channel for free videos. And you can see me reading through Agatho's letter written to the council, to the emperor, read out loud at the council and accepted explicitly by the council, where they accept papal indefectibility, i.e. papal infallibility. And in that same session, say that all of Agatho's predecessors were free from teaching error, and they include Honorius. And several sessions later, they then accuse Honorius of heresy. So, yeah, they rely on Luke 22 and that claim as not just the personal faith of Peter, but his teaching office. Protestants will say that's a exegetical stretch. Catholics will counter and say, well, by that line of reasoning, the way that the New Testament quotes the Old Testament is constantly a stretch. The debate continues. Catholic fam, thank you. He says, does it hurt being so cool? Keep up the great work. God bless you and your family. Thank you. You too. And I appreciate that. Super chat. You're awesome. Thank you. Michael should do 14 hours of streaming in honor of the Pope. We are currently at 11 and a half hours today. Questioning the magisterium is allowed private correction, but not public scandal. Yeah, right. Public dissent or even private dissent is not allowed. Questioning is a different issue. Offering constructive criticism, that's a different issue. How will this affect LeBron's legacy? You got me on that one. I don't know. I don't keep up with LeBron, so. Jedi says, I don't know Provost at all. Watch this stream from the beginning. You'll get a decent feel for him. Trad West says, hey, RT, what is everyone yapping about the new Holy Father? Hit the rewind button. We went through it. You came to the right stream. You just got to hit the rewind button. So, yeah. A whole lot. People are saying a lot of stuff. Thank you for that super chat, John L. Love me, Pope. Love me, Church. Love God. Simple as. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Confirms the Cardinals really went for Francis 2.0. A lot of people will see it that way. Mark says magisterial difficulties course sounds appealing. Yeah, I go into it in more detail in my courses with Catholic Polytechnic if you want to sign up for that. But for a shorter version, I am going over that on rtcourses.com for a more condensed version of what I'm offering through CPU on that particular topic. And we're going to talk about tensions on the death penalty, tensions on slavery, and tensions on outside the church there is no salvation, and magisterial documents. We'll talk about that. Maybe even limbo. We'll see if there's enough time. Must we abide by everything in the Catechism of the Catholic Church? Technically, something being in the Catechism of the Catholic Church per Ratzinger does not make it magisterial. It's magisterial and therefore binding to one degree or another, depending on the level of authority at which it was taught. Not because it's in the Catechism, but dependent on what the source of that teaching is. So by being in the catechism, that doesn't make it magisterial. But the catechism is quoting from something. Are they quoting from an encyclical, an ecumenical council? They're quoting from something, maybe a papal homily. You got to go and look at it. Is that magisterial? Sometimes, and maybe even the majority of cases for the catechism, yeah. There are some exceptions to some of the stuff that's quoted in the catechism that you might say, okay, technically that's not magisterial. That is part of the course of what I'm offering through Catholic Polytechnic University, is how to evaluate whether or not something is magisterial or not. That's a big question. So you need to sign up for that if you haven't already. CatholicPolytechnic.org/magisterium. You'll get a deep dive there. That's a quick answer here, though. When will Acutus be canonized? Now that you have seen that there's a new pope today, so he'll resume with the canonizations. I don't know when he'll decide that will be, but yeah, he'll resume that. I don't see him reversing that, Mark says Protestantism isn't Christianity, it's a deformation. Well, the Catholic Church teaches that Protestantism or Protestants are Christians, so anybody who is validly baptized is a Christian. I get what you're saying, though. Okay. Scrolling through the chat, seeing if there's anything else there. Let me also check Twitter and make sure we're not missing anything massive. Okay, here's something from Cardinal Sarah. Let's see what he says. Cardinal Sarah says, God cares for us, God loves us all, and evil will not prevail. We are all in God's hands, therefore, without fear, united hand in hand with God among ourselves, let us move forward. I don't know how to read that. That almost doesn't sound very, very good. That sounds like you might be a little concerned. Evil will not prevail. We're in God's hands. It kind of sounds like, this is a bad situation, but God's in control kind of thing. That's the way I'm reading it. Maybe I'm misreading him, right? Maybe I'm reading too much into that. But just knowing his track record on a number of issues, he's not going to be a fan of Prevost. He's not. He's not at all going to be a fan of Prevost. Quite the opposite. So I think I might be reading them accurately. Mirek says those are the Pope's words. Fair enough. Fair enough. If that is him just quoting Prevost today, because I don't know, I haven't seen like a translation of it yet. If that's all he's doing, fair enough. Fair enough. But even then, I still think that I think it's safe to assume he's going to be critical of him, right? So yeah, Raul says he's quoting Leo's speech. Fair enough. What else we got? Viola says, "What in the heck? I don't like him at all." So there. I don't know who you're referencing. If that's Leo the 14th or Sirrah. Tim, great to see you. Just graduated from the Magisterial Studies Certificate program. So he's a legend. So he says Leo the 14th's brother is a retired Catholic school principal. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, we watched a little clip of him earlier in the show today. Viola confers Cardinal Sarah. I got you. Also think Sarah was quoting Leo the 14th. Yeah, we established that. I got you. Okay, so we got somebody who's saying, I'm reserving judgment. The poor man just got elected. Let's give him a chance to at least get settled into the office before we pass judgment. Fair enough. I think we can get a decent read on him based on some things. But yeah, I hear you, and there's wisdom in that. Tim recommends highly the Magisterial Studies Certificate program. Y'all go and check it out. CatholicPolytechnic.org/reason and theology, but you need to check it out now because it starts Monday. So, any idea on how soon we'll hear from Leo the 14th? I suspect tomorrow, right? Probably hear from one of his, his first homily or something at the Vatican. Why did Sarah say that Francis was a heretic? Well, he said that Francis taught heresy. And he said that because of fiducia supplicans. He felt that, Pope Francis taught heresy there. What kind of coffee do I drink? Walmart's coffee machine today. Got pushed through it, man. What if we got a pope that it could only speak sign language? He wouldn't be a very effective communicator for the vast majority of people. Will he activate his X account tomorrow? I think you mean deactivate. And I've already seen fake accounts pop up, by the way. Give us a brief introduction to Leo XIV. I did that at the beginning of the stream. So hit rewind, but to quickly recap in less than 30 seconds. A continuation of Pope Francis. Okay, so if you liked Pope Francis, you'll like him. If you didn't like Pope Francis, probably not going to like him. If you were somewhere in between, you'll be somewhere in between here. There's a quick recap. Are we obliged to like Chicago-style pizza now? No, that is not within the scope of the authentic magisterium. So, where's the link to the course? CatholicPolytechnic.org/magisterium. Just put it in the chat just now. Bam. CatholicPolytechnic.org/magisterium. So go and check that out. Keep it up for a second there. Okay. Michael says, now I want Chicago style pizza. I don't know if I've ever had. I know I went to Chicago a few years ago. And then a few years prior to that. I don't recall if I had pizza. I don't know. Is that really a thing? Is that a big thing? I keep hearing people talk about that. It's this. Y'all know I'm ignorant of all this stuff. Okay, so making sure I'm not missing anything big here before we sign off. And I will be obviously back tomorrow, joining y'all tomorrow for another live stream with more information of what we know and everything. More information is going to come out overnight. So I will keep y'all up to date. Y'all hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Y'all know I put in work today. 11 hours, 40 minutes, streamed 10 hours straight, took a break, came back, gave you another hour, 40 minutes. Show some appreciation if you don't mind. Hit that sub button, hit the like button, hit the bell for notifications so you know when I go live. Go and check out my courses that I pointed you just now to. Also check out maybe becoming a patron on Patreon or hit the join button right here on YouTube. Some people don't want to do that. They would rather support it in other ways. So got a PayPal link, got a GoFundMe link, all that in the show notes. So go and check that. Okay. That's it, y'all. Hit the sub button. See y'all later. God bless.